Tonight, the wrap of the First Lantern event continues with yet another what-if story. Such a shock. Fury of Firestorm gives us a demonstration of the worst escape room player ever, and can someone get Scott Lobdell some Adderall so that Teen Titans can focus on a single story for once? All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 82 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and boy oh boy, do we have a super interesting episode for you this week, full of super interesting things that are really awesome. Let me start off by just listing off the comics that we have, because oh man, are they interesting. We have the number 18 issues of Batman the Dark Knight, Superman, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, Teen Titans, I, Vampire, and Justice League Dark. Additionally, we have the number 9 issue of Batman Incorporated and the number 6 issue of Talon. And man, all of those, so interesting. So, like, wow. Amazing. It's definitely not just one of those months and one of those weeks where not a lot happens. It's, you got to listen to all the comics this week, especially I, Vampire, which, thinking about it, I do actually want you to listen to I, Vampire, but because of that, I probably shouldn't have put it after Teen Titans, which, don't get me wrong, super interesting, but also sucked. Like a lot. But regardless, that's the order I went with. So, yeah, be sure to listen to everything and how super awesome and totally not just normal and average it is. It's so interesting. Starting off with the single most interesting event comic of Wrath of the First Lantern, Red Lanterns. Red Lanterns number 18, written by Peter Milligan, art by Miguel Sepulveda. This is another tie-in to Wrath of the First Lantern, and boy oh boy does it show. So, we open up with the First Lantern just talking to Atrocitus. Reminder, last issue he was going after something like the heart of emotion or something like that, which is apparently where the Guardians stored their emotional well-being. But First Lantern shows up and he's like, "Hi, I'm the First Lantern. You're in one of my tie-ins, so I'm just going to bound you up in my weird little vein thingies, and we're going to look at the points in your life that could have gone differently." And Atrocitus is like, "No, I'm not a plaything for you." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, sure, whatever, buddy. Anyway, let's go back to what is obviously the point that we're going to change here, which is the moment that the Manhunters attacked your planet." And so he goes back and says, "All right, what if, call me crazy here, what if the Manhunters didn't attack your planet? What would have happened then?" And we see that on this timeline, Atros, not Atrocitus, Atros became, disillusioned with the government, very angry, led a revolution, and basically took over the government of Ryut and installed himself as a revolutionary. And the First Lantern's like, I mean, you did pretty good. You said, power to the people. And that lasted for maybe, a week. And then all of a sudden, you gave in to the power. And you became this dictator who saw traitors in every corner. And you had them executed and whatnot. Until one day, your wife comes in. And she starts chewing you out. Because you are clearly living the high life. Banging hookers. Smoking weed. And you basically hit her in front of your son. And Atrocitus is like, "I would never do that. That doesn't sound like me at all." And he's like, you're kind of a dick, Atros. That's kind of the one thing that stays constant here. So either way, after that, you get even more wrapped up in your dictatorship. And you, at this point, put on a show trial framing your wife as one of the traitors so that you can kill her and continue to sleep with hookers and smoke your weed. And Atros is like, "I would never kill my wife." And he's like, "I'm just showing you exactly what. I'm not saying that you did, but I'm saying you kind of did." At this point, there's the secondary storyline of Rancor has gone to Earth. He's made a construct to make himself look human, and he has wooed this one girl by breaking the arm of an assailant upon her, and they're just having a nice little picnic, and he's zoning out because he's like, I have to tell her I'm a monster underneath it all. And she's like, what's wrong? And he's like, nothing, I'll tell you later. So then they go back, and as they're arriving, he's like, okay, I gotta tell you the truth because I do really like you and I want this to work. And she's like, oh, it's fine as long as you didn't like murder someone or anything. He's like, so as they get into his apartment, her apartment, kind of unclear, Bleeze is there. And Bleeze is like, hey, Rancor, I think you should probably ditch this bitch and get back to what we were here for. And she's just like, Rancor, what are you? And she looks over and Rancor's construct is faded away. And she's like, oh my god, you're a monster. Stay away. Just get away from me. So that'll get resolved at some point. But anyway, back to the Atros story. So he's at the height of his power. He's taken over most of the planet. He barely thinks about his murdered wife. And then all of a sudden, Atros is shot in the chest from behind. And it turns out it's his own son who's killing him out of just spite for having murdered his mother. So at that point, First Lanter's like, wow, it wasn't that crazy. Anyway, I've kind of given everybody the choice before as to whether or not they want that world or this world. So you basically have to make the choice of, do you want your family to hate you, but your planet is not destroyed by the Manhunters, or do you want to stay in this world where your planet is destroyed by the Manhunters? And so Atrocitus is like, okay, killed by my own son? Nah, not a fan of that. Anything is worth that, even the entire planet being destroyed. And so he breaks out of the First Lantern's bonds, and the First Lantern's like, all right, so you have chosen, you have made the conscious decision to let your planet be destroyed. That's on you now, bud. Anyway, I'm just going to go steal that heart thing, the Great Heart. I'm going to go take that now. And he's like, oh, actually, I was planning on using that against the Guardians. So can I use that? And he's like, oh, no. See, now that I have all of this emotional energy, it's basically going to get me up to the full power I needed. So he just swallows it, he disappears, and he's like, oh, and by the way, remember, this is all your fault. And he disappears. And so the Manhunters were there looking at him. He's like, Master, we cool? And Atrocitus hops onto his ring and he's like, all right, every Red Lantern, listen up. I have found the person who is responsible for the destruction of my planet, and I order you all to attack this person and kill them on sight. This person is me. And that's where it leaves off. Atrocitus really doesn't think very far forward, does he? I guess that's kind of the point of rage. Like, you're just in the moment, you're just doing the thing, but like, it seems really stupid that he's like, no, now I'm responsible. Kill me instead. I don't know. That's just me. On top of that, the Rancor plot's kind of whatever. I don't think anyone ever thought that he was going to be able to make a life on Earth. That didn't seem like it was feasible. So the fact that it's so stupid the way that it comes out is just like, yeah, there's just a crazy weird vampire looking lady in this apartment and then you're forced to fight. I guess it works just as much as any other way, but it's still kind of like, all right, well, just a way to wrap up the plot as soon as we needed them to get back into space. So I don't know. Overall, it just kind of felt like a weak issue, and I think it mainly comes down to, as I've said in earlier tie-ins to Wrath of the First Lantern, the formula is done. We've seen this, they're showing a life that they could have had, and whether they accept it or not is all up to that. Like, I don't care anymore. Show me why the First Lantern is a threat. Now that he has his full power level back, according to him, he's fully able to warp reality to his whims. Show me what that means. Show me why this is the big bad. Because as it stands now, he's just a what-if machine. And I don't feel like anything he does has any real weight to it besides just, ooh, look at what could have been. So overall, I'll give this one like I'll give it a 6.5. It just was I don't really care for anything going on, but I can recognize that it is at least forwarding the plot and doing something interesting, but whatever. Batman Incorporated number 9, written by Grant Morrison, art by Chris Burnham and Jason Masters. So last issue, Damian died. I don't think that's really a spoiler anymore, but Damian died, and this issue picks up with the Bat family of Tim, Dick, Bruce, and Alfred delivering his coffin into the grave, and we keep intercutting to that back and forth. But first we cut back to Batman basically cradling his son, and then the guy who did it, Heretic, steps up and he's like, hey Batman, I did it, I'm the one who killed him, and now I'm gonna kill you because you're weak. And Batman comes up, just smashes the guy's sword and starts beating the crap out of him, seemingly having the upper hand, but eventually the Heretic does get some punches in and starts bringing down Batman, and all the other Leviathan people are looking around like, should we jump in? Is this a mano-a-mano? Do we do something? So then Nightwing gets involved, kicks Heretic in the back, and it's intercut later on in the issue, but basically he manages to get thrown away. Batman continues to fight Heretic for what little he can. They get blasted outside of Wayne Tower, and as he's about to do the Bane thing of breaking Batman's back on his knee, Tim Drake, who's inside the tank in the middle of Wayne Enterprises, just starts firing at them, and then also at the other Leviathan agents, enough to get basically the entire Bat family out, and also that one girl who was in the area for whatever reason. So anyway, back to the funeral. Bruce is told, hey, maybe you should say something, and he just gives a thing saying like, Damian just suddenly appeared in my life, and now he's suddenly gone, and I'm super pissed off about it, and we will get vengeance. And so that's basically the gist of his thing. And then we see the funeral for Knight, who also died, I think 2 issues ago, and all of Britain is mourning. Apparently Prince Harry and William are also there, and we see Squire, Sarah Beryl. She's sitting on her mom's couch just crying, and her mom's like, maybe you shouldn't be watching the news. And she's like, no. I get it now. I know what I have to do. And she goes and talks to Dark Ranger, another member of Batman Incorporated, now dressed in the Knight outfit, and just saying, like, I didn't take Leviathan seriously enough. I want to team up with you, and I want to go deal with them. And Dark Ranger's like, awesome, let's do it. And she's like, by the way, call me Knight now. So then we just get, I don't know if it's going to come up later, but apparently the government, like the Prime Minister himself, is talking about bringing Knight back to life with a Lazarus pit. So that's a thing. But then we see everyone still at the gravesite. Dick and Tim walk away, and it's just Alfred and Bruce. And Bruce is like, hey, Alfred, didn't I tell you not to let Damian get involved in this fight? And Alfred's like, I thought he could handle it. And Bruce is like, thought he could handle it. Okay, all right. How would you go on vacation? How would you take a nice long vacation? And then we'll talk about it. And he's like, sir, but I take a vacation. So at this point, we see that Wayne Tower is still being held down by Leviathan. All these kids are rioting around towns with like baseball bats and smashing in police officers' faces. We see the Mutants gang from Dark Knight Rises start to show up. And Heretic is basically addressing Talia's mom and just like, hey mom, aren't you happy I killed Damian? And she's like, no I'm not. I didn't give you that order. I didn't tell you to do that. Why'd you do that? And he's like, he got in my way, and I wanted to make my own decision. He's like, you don't make your own decision. I make your decisions. I'm the head of Leviathan. You better remember that now. He's like, yeah, well, I'm Batman now, so what of it? So at that point, we see Leviathan puts out their message saying Batman Incorporated is evil, capitalists, extra military crap and needs to be dismantled. As such, they are going to attack anyone who has any sort of bat anything on them. And we see Commissioner Gordon is on the side of this press conference with a little Batman pin in his lapel, and he just folds it over as to hide it. So then all Batman Incorporated starts talking, and they're like, okay, here's the deal. We're all undercover now. We're all under the radar. We found this detonator thing, this cube. We have a handle on it. Apparently it activates a thing called a Ring of Death, and we think that in all the cities where there's Batman Incorporated people, there's these massive bombs that will like destroy the world sort of thing. And so we have to figure out how to deal with that. And also, Wingman Jason Todd just disappeared. Can we figure out where he is? And then we cut over to Jason, who is surrounded by women dressed in skull masks and like spandex. And they're saying, all right, what happens next to you, Jason, is entirely your decision. You got to figure out if you're with us or against us. I don't know. It's something. But either way, last few pages is we see Bruce in the Batcave. He takes some pain pills. He puts on ointment, stitches himself up. He presses a button on the computer to say that Damian is officially dead. He puts on his bat outfit, walks over to Bat Cow, says, "Hey, Bat Cow," and Bat Cow goes moo. And then he just screams in his cave because he's so angry. I mean, I liked it. I think it was a fine enough issue. It does feel like it's kind of just moving pieces around for the final act, quote unquote, because obviously there's not that many issues left in it. In terms of being a Requiem issue for Damian, I think it did a good job. I think this was the one book where it had to do a good job because obviously it's the one who did it in the first place. But I also think that because they were so busy with moving the pieces around, a lot of it just felt like it had nothing to do with it. Especially like the first page when I said he's cradling a son, like it's for a very small panel up in the left. And then he just gets in the fight with Heretic, which I get that, you know, you got to move quick with it, but it felt like maybe he should have spent a little longer. Like Nightwing spent longer. The entire time Nightwing was on panel. He's like, "Oh God, how did this happen? He was fine. He was fine just a minute ago." Like, I don't know. I feel like Batman should have had a little bit more for that, but obviously shock's a thing, so whatever. Overall, art's okay. I've never been a huge fan of the art. I've gone on record with that before, but I think that the writing is still pretty solid. I'm liking where it goes. Obviously, I think the most out of place thing is whatever the hell's going on with Jason Todd. I'm going to assume that that's either something that happened before the New 52 or something we have yet to get to. Judging by how mysterious they're keeping it, I'm assuming we'll get to it, but I have no idea what it is yet. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7 flat. I think that it's fine. It's a good enough issue, but it's not a standout in terms of what we've already seen in this book, especially compared to things like last issue. So yeah, just a flat 7. Batman The Dark Knight number 18, written by Gregg Hurwitz, art by Ethan Van Sciver. So last issue we left off with Mad Hatter has some stealthy operation where he's abducting a lot of people and whatnot, and Batman's catching up to him. This issue opens up Batman, or Bruce Wayne I should say, just walking down the street on the phone with Alfred saying, "Hey, do we have any more records on that like plot of land that I think Mad Hatter could be at?" And Alfred's looking into it. And as he's walking down the street, he sees his ex, I think it was like Tatiana. I think that's who, I don't know, Natalia? Tatiana? Something like that. She's literally not named in this whole book, so forgive me. But regardless, they see each other, they smile and wave, and Bruce continues walking on as Alfred's like, "Hey, by the way, I can't find anything as to who owns this particular land, but it is owned by the same person who owns a nightclub called the Wild Hare." So Batman breaks into the club. He sees Tweedledee, and Tweedledee's like, "Am I supposed to be impressed?" And he's like, "Yeah, it was a pretty dramatic entrance. Anyway, tell me what you know about Mad Hatter." And Tweedledee's like, one time I was guarding this club, and like, yeah, it had some bad stuff going on in the background, but then you kicked me in my face, and like, I had to get major reconstruction surgery, and I can't like taste things anymore because of you. I want you to understand that's why I'm not telling you anything, not because I'm loyal to Mad Hatter. And Batman's like, "Okay, well, when you were guarding that whatever thing, people died inside, and I'm going to make sure that you completely lose your jaw if you don't tell me where Mad Hatter is now." So then he still doesn't crack, but he manages to steal Tweedledee's phone and gets a single GPS location off of it for an abandoned warehouse. So as he goes there, he sees there's plenty of stuff going on at the warehouse. He breaks in and starts knocking heads. But as he does so, he's like, oh, there's going to be like weapons here, like pistols and rocket launchers. And then as he opens it up, it turns out it's just tea. And as he analyzes it, the tea is laced with psychedelic things, specifically for Mad Hatter to drink so that he can just kind of be high. And that's it. But apparently it also comes with increased strength. And at that moment, Batman gets hit on the head by Mad Hatter with like a steel beam. And it actually manages to incapacitate Batman for a little bit as Mad Hatter makes his escape. So then they get up onto the rooftop. Mad Hatter's gone, but Catwoman's there, stealing a hubcap off of the Batmobile. And Batman's like, I swear to God, please tell me you're not doing what you're doing right now. And she just starts laying down the moves like, oh yeah, you want to get rough with me, huh? Is that what you want to do? And she gets all up on him. And he's like, okay, I really don't want to do this right now, and I don't like it like that, but like, maybe I do. I gotta go. So he jumps off and takes the Batmobile home. And then we get more into Mad Hatter's past. Apparently, whatever he's trying to do, everything is fully cast. He's made everyone except for one specific role, which is for Alice. And we see there's a school dance coming up, and Jervis is way shorter than he should be at his age. Like, he is a late bloomer. And he talks to his parents about it, and they're like, okay, look, we'll go to the doctor. But in the meantime, like, I work in a haberdashery, son. I can give you like this cool top hat and it'll make you seem taller. And he looks at it and he's like, I'm just going to trust that my friends like me for me. So he goes in and he asks Alice to the dance. And Alice is like, actually, I think all of us are just kind of going as like a big group, like friends, and, you know, we'll have fun. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I'll see you there. So they go to the doctor, and the doctor basically says, yeah, you have a testosterone deficiency. You're kind of not hitting puberty right, but it's cool. Like, it happens to a lot of people. And Jervis is like, no, give me something to fix it. So he's like, okay, well, we have done a little bit of research into this, and we do have, like, a pill that should kickstart things. And he holds up a little pill and says, this one makes you bigger. And he basically says, I don't want to give this to you because it has a lot of side effects, including things like being a psychopath. So maybe it's not the best option. But if you guys really want it, I can prescribe it. And so they do prescribe it. But Jervis's dad is like, look, son, you don't need it. Like, you're fine the way you are. Just, if you really want it, we'll give it to you. Just really make sure you think about it. So the dance comes. And he goes over to Alice and like tries holding her hand to dance. And Alice is like, hey, I like you, Jervis. I just don't like you like that. And Jervis is completely dejected. But then we see modern day where he gets to the home of Alice and Keith Kala. And Keith opens the door. And Jervis is standing there with a dozen red roses. And he's like, oh, does Alice D live here? And he's like, yeah. She married me and took my last name, and now we have a bunch of brats running around. And she's like, cool. Here's $100. Please leave the house for a few hours. And Keith's like, all right, sure, whatever. We're going to the movies. So Jervis comes in and says, Alice, it's me. I'm here for a date, a very important one. And he walks in and wants to reenact his perfect day that he had back then. And he sees Alice, and Alice is now just a broken down housewife, completely miserable. And she's like, no, like, I grew up. Everyone grew up, Jervis, except for you. You're the only one who didn't. And Jervis is like, all right, well, I can't let you live like this. That's just mean. So he takes some of his tea, gets hyper-aggressive, and then beats her to death with her own iron. So then we get, from Batman's perspective, I guess, a dream he's having where he thinks about a project he had in school where he had to write about what his parents want for him out of life. And his mom says, like, oh, we just want you to be known by somebody. We want somebody to truly understand you as you grow up, because it's so scary to open up to people. And so he goes to his ex's house and says, like, hey, I want to show you who I am. And she's like, look, we don't get second chances. But he's like, I'm not asking for a do-over, or I'm not asking for a do-over. I'm just asking for a way to do it differently. And so he leads her to the window, jumps out on the bat plane and says, this is who I am. And then he takes her to the bat cave and says, this is who I am. And he shows her the bat suit and says, this is who I am. So then we go back to Jervis, who's shooting a bunch of blondes that kind of look like Alice, saying, like, none of these are right. All of them got to die because they reminded me of her, and I don't like feeling things. So he crawls up fetal position, and we get one last, like, 12-panel sequence here of Jervis just staring, as a kid, at the bottle of pills, and he's, like, hemming and hawing. He's, like, trying to convince himself to do it, and that he doesn't need it or whatnot, but in the very end, he does take a pill, and that's the end of the issue. I liked it. I really did enjoy it. I think this is a good little characterization bit for Mad Hatter. I think it does a good job of, while I wouldn't say making him empathetic, because clearly he's insane, I do think that it does a better job of just giving that little bit of characterization that makes him more understandable. It makes it more, he didn't just come out the womb already insane as the Mad Hatter. Like, this is a nature versus nurture sort of thing. And he ends up being a combination of both, where his nature led to this problem that he made himself, and he just couldn't get over it. And I think that's interesting to view. In terms of the ex, I'm going to call her Natalia, because that seems right. In terms of Natalia knowing that Bruce is Batman, so she's dead now, right? Like, she's gonna die by the end of this arc, if not the end of Gregg Hurwitz's run on this book. I'm calling that now. But overall, I'll give this issue I'll give it a flat 7. It's interesting. It's got, 7.5. I think it did a good job in what it did. I think it's a solid examination of Mad Hatter, and it does something new with Batman. I mean, sure, he's revealed his identity a couple times before, but not recently. Not in the time that I've been reading comics. It's only happened a couple times. So, yeah, I'm at least intrigued, and I'm looking forward to seeing what new story shakeups can come out of that. Talon number 6, written by Scott Snyder and James Tynion IV, art by Guillem March. Last issue, Calvin went into this big security island thing, and he got caught. And it turns out it's because there's, like, the Grand Master or something there. This issue picks up with Sebastian Clark. He is freaking out because the Grand Master is there, and it's like, he's trapped on an island. He's already probably dead. I'm pissed. I'm out of here. This sucks. And Casey's there, and is basically asking, how exactly do you know about the Grand Master? You said his name, John Wycliffe. Like, I've been poring over documents. How do you know that? And he's like, it's on the database. I saw it. Like, that's not the problem here. Calvin is trapped there. And Casey's like, don't worry about him. I'm sure he's not dead yet. So then we cut inside the island. And apparently the 3 Talons that have captured Calvin are a grandfather, father, and son, who all were Talons, and they really keep on harping on the son the whole time because he did not produce an heir to continue the O'Malley bloodline of Talons, so they call him a failure repeatedly. But Calvin takes their distraction on their family legacy, advantage of that, to thread a rope around 2 of their necks, use it as a tightrope to get off of the pressure pad he's on, and then the cage that he's in retracts. And he starts fighting the Talons, but as 2 of them are choking, they're like, Grandpapa, help us, we're choking. He's like, God, you guys suck. So they cut themselves out. Talon manages to make its way down one of the sewer tunnels further. And they're like, the turbines are about to start back up, so he's going to get flooded out. Like, it's not going to be a big deal. But, of course, the kid, the son, runs in, and he charges after Calvin, eager to prove himself. And so they get swallowed up by the sewer and all the water coming down from that. Anyway, back in the compound, Casey is like, I got a bad feeling about this. I got some instincts going on. I need to check it out. And her daughter walks in being like, hey, Sebastian's breaking a bunch of stuff in the training room. Should I go ask him if he needs a friend? And Casey's like, no, you're going to go to your room and don't ever go near that guy again because he is crazy. So then she does a search on the Court of Owls database for John Wycliffe, and it comes up blank. And so she's like, that's suspicious. So we see Calvin pull himself out of the tunnel, I guess, and he starts climbing up some rungs. And one of the Talons, of course, the son, plants his knife in him, being like, "Oh, there's no way out except through me." And he's like, "Look, kid, clearly you don't like the way your grandfather and father treat you because you didn't bring in a son. But I'm betting that that was a choice, right? Like, you chose not to introduce your kid to the Talon lifestyle. You know they're evil, right?" And Talon's like, "Maybe." And he's like, "Cool. If you know they're evil, could you maybe just help me? Like, I'm trying to just take them down. Can we just be cool with each other for like 5 minutes?" And we don't see what happens with that, but we do cut over to Uptown Gotham, where the butcher, whatever his name is, Felix, I think, he is calling into the Court of Owls, and he's like, "Hey, you know how you guys wanted me to find Talon? Still haven't done that, but I am literally 10 feet away from Batman right now, and I could kill him. So that cool?" And the court is like, "No, don't. We do not want Batman to know we're still here, man. Do not get involved." And Felix is like, "Psh, you guys are a bunch of cowards. I totally want to kill Batman." So Batman, it turns out, was going to the scene of the crime where Felix killed some random couple. And so he's like, okay, someone with extremely large hands and like possibly claws did this. And as he jumps out the building, he sees the claw marks that Felix left on the spire he was clinging onto. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the Court of Owls said, "Hey, Felix, keep it alone, or else we're going to detonate the cryo bombs that we placed behind your eyeballs." And so Felix is like, "I'm going to pull those things out." And so he jabs his claws into his eyes and starts peeling around for him. So anyway, the two elder O'Malleys are saying how much of a failure their younger one is and how he's shouldn't be thinking for himself or whatever, and how he's probably already dead. But then he shows up with Calvin draped over his shoulders, being like, "Yeah, I did it. Now let's go show him off to the Grandmaster." So then we go back to the compound, and turns out that Casey's kid didn't listen, and she's just showing Sebastian all of her Pokemon on her game system. And Casey makes her way up to the penthouse, has to use an override code to get in there. But then we cut back to Calvin, and Calvin meets up with the Grandmaster, and he's like, "Hey, hi, I'm the Grandmaster and current CEO of Securitas Island. Thank you so much for doing the work of the Court of Owls." And he's like, "What do you, huh? What? What are you saying?" And he's like, "Look, I'm not the Grandmaster who recruited you. I started like just a couple months ago, but let me just tell you everything that happened in the meantime. There was a guy who was in the Court of Owls who's named Lincoln March, but don't worry, we're not going to mention that. He teamed up with the Grandmaster at the time in order to usher in like a quote-unquote new age, and he poisoned a bunch of our members at dinner. Then we kind of realized we don't want him to be a Grandmaster because he's willing to poison his own people. So we kicked him out, and I became Grandmaster. And all of the things that you've been doing on the behalf of the old Grandmaster." And he's like, "No, I've been taking away stuff from the Court of Owls." And he's like, "No, you've been taking away stuff from the real Court of Owls to go back to the annoyed that we kicked him out old Grandmaster." And he's like, "That's impossible. You're lying." And he's like, "Nope. Turns out that your old buddy Sebastian Clark is the former Grandmaster of the Court of Owls. And he's the one who recruited you." So I think I said back in like issue 1, "Oh, this guy's going to be evil." Called it. Yeah. So obviously Sebastian Clark is the bad guy here. Or, everyone's shades of morally gray, but he's definitely on the darker gray side. So do I like the reveal? Yes. Oh, and by the way, when Casey made her way up to the penthouse, she found Sebastian's safe that had a bunch of his Court of Owls stuff. So it's definitely 100% true. Do I like the reveal? I'd say yes. I think it's well enough written. It's interesting enough. The hints were there. I'm intrigued. I like it. In terms of how they actually managed to do it, I don't know. I kind of don't like the way of, I'm the evil mastermind and I'm just going to tell you all of these things. It's like, well, maybe hold some cards close to the chest. Maybe they debated on whether or not they should tell him, and this seemed to be the best path. But it just seems to me like he just so wants to rub it into Calvin's face, like, you're an idiot. You've been doing all of this for the wrong person. It's like, all right, well, I don't know. Just seems, especially for a character we just met. Like this guy, John Wycliffe, we just met him. This is the first time. So I'm a bit like, who cares? I would rather it come from somebody I know a bit better. Overall, though, still a solid issue. I'll give it a flat 7, regardless. I am enjoying the series, but I'm waiting for something. I mean, I know that's big, but I don't know. I'm just waiting for... You know what I want to see is I want to see the confrontation. I want to see Calvin go up against Sebastian now that he's given him all this like money and stuff like that. I'm interested to see how that's going to pan out. So hopefully they'll stick the landing there. But this one, pretty straight 7. I'm enjoying it, but it was kind of just a lot of nothing followed by a really big bombshell. So, yeah. Superman number 18, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Aaron Kuder, Tyler Kirkham, and Robson Rocha. So, hell on earth happened. That's all you need to know. Hell on earth happened. But first we open with a prologue of Orion of the New Gods beating up a kaiju somewhere on New Genesis. And all the narration's like, hey, so Orion was on Earth in Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman book. Just know that he was around, but now he's back on New Genesis. And he was called there by Highfather because there's something going on that he needs to be aware of. And Orion's like, I kind of don't want to be here because in my time on Earth I realized I like humans because they're always striving to be like better and tough, even if they're fragile and tiny. So he's thinking about that. But then we go into, and that was apparently the prologue. This book is broken into quote-unquote chapters. So chapter 1, the United States Senate is holding a hearing on the fact that the Fortress of Solitude was apparently not known about before, and now it is. And they're like, hey, Superman, why are you keeping a fortified bunker at the top of the world? And Superman's in front of the Senate, and he's like, I live there. I go there to get away from things sometimes. And yes, I know it seems like a bunker, but that's just the way that Kryptonians build things. And also there is dangerous stuff inside, so yeah, it's kind of a bunker. And the Senate's like, okay, well, you are still under some oversight to the international community. You can't just keep dangerous things, so we're going to send in a team to look at the dangerous things and take away anything that we think might be a threat to nations. And Superman's like, no, you're not going to do that. And so then the senator's like, okay, you're an American citizen. Like, we give you that, even though you're an alien, we give you that, so that way you're able to, exist here. You do us a little bit. Your word that it's safe is not good enough. And he's like, well, that's all I'm giving you. Peace out. And then he just leaves. We see that the Daily Planet reporters, except for Lois Lane, are all watching this. And I think it's Miles Edge walks in, their boss, and just like, hey, why are a bunch of print reporters watching TV? Shouldn't you be, getting these stories that I'm supposed to be airing? And by the way, where's Lois Lane? And Scott Lobdell stops the book, and he's like, hey, we made Lois Lane a producer instead of a reporter back in issue 1. I'm just gonna undo that. So she's now a reporter again. Just so you know. And then we see her out on the steps in front of the Senate building asking Superman hey, why do you think you can just ignore the Senate? And he's like, because I live in the Arctic and that's not the U.S.'s jurisdiction. That seems pretty easy here. By the way, Lois, are you a reporter again? She's like, maybe. And he's like, cool. Talk to you later. So he flies off. Chapter 2, we're at a nightclub called Cloud 9. It's on top of a roof of a building. And Clark was invited there by Cat Grant. And he's being hit on by some other girls, but he goes and talks to Cat, who apparently has the VIP area of this rooftop. And she's basically saying, she's all up and kissing on Clark. And he's like, I don't like you like that, Cat. What do you want me here for? He's like, okay, remember how you got both of us fired from our job? Well, I want you to join me in this new venture. And it's a website called Clark Catropolis, where there's news from Clark's side and gossip from Cat's side. And Clark's like, that's a funny joke, but like, why did you make a whole mock-up of the website? She's like, it's not a joke. I genuinely want you to join in me here. He's like, I'm not going to do that, Cat, because it's kind of stupid, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to help you get your job back at the Daily Planet, but like, no, we're not going in together. And before anything else happens, everyone at this nightclub on the roof starts jumping off the building. And so Clark immediately goes Superman and starts putting them all back up on top of the roof. Why not down on the ground? I'll never know. But regardless, puts them back on top of the roof, and they just keep on jumping. And Superman's like, crap, what's happening? And he looks around via some sort of vision, and he sees a signal coming out of the DJ's booth. So he heat visions it, and everyone stops jumping off. And all the people are like, Superman, that was kind of weird, and the fact that you were right here makes us think that it was maybe you doing it. Do you have superpower? Are we like toys to your godly power? And Superman's like, no, that's stupid. And Cat Grant comes up being like, Superman, any words on what just happened here? And he's like, I'm sorry, for what website? And it's like, Clark Catropolis. And it's like, that sounds stupid. Superman says that sounds stupid. And then he flies away. And Cat's like, oh, well, wait till Clark hears that I got the scoop on Superman. So then we get epilogue where everyone is talking about Clark, or talking about Superman, saying, oh, that was scary how he was just there. Man, what could he possibly be capable of? And then we see over at Star Labs across the city, some scientists are picking up some electroencephalogram activity in the brain, indicating REM sleep of a Mr. Hector Hammond, who I think is a psychic from like the Green Lantern books, but he's here now. And because he has REM sleep and he's dreaming, could he be responsible for this? And I said epilogue, but apparently there's an epilogue too, where we then go back to the New Genesis, and Orion is talking to Highfather in front of the prophecy wall, and it shows the Earth exploding, and then Highfather's like, and from in the moment of the blast, and a force of unspeakable power was released upon the cosmos, one that could threaten all of existence. And wouldn't you know it, it's Superman. And so Orion's like, psh, I'll go beat him up, whatever. He didn't look that tough. Okay. I don't dislike any one part individually. I think each part serves its own purpose. And I'm interested in each of them individually. But the collection of them in this issue of prologue, chapters 1 and 2, and then 2 epilogues is like the stupidest thing. I would have much preferred everything we saw there if they didn't put it into these weird-ass little chapter bits. And I know that it's just like the framing of it's practically just a narration box saying, and then over here, but the fact that they so deliberately labeled them as separate parts rather than just letting it feel like one continuous story really bothered me for some reason. So there's that. Add on top of it the whole Cat Grant angle. God, I hope we don't run with that beyond this issue, because I could not care less about Cat Grant. I don't know if they're trying to push her over or something, but boy, it just does not work. So yeah, I gotta give this one like I'll give it a 6. I think there's, like I said, I like each part individually on its own, but collectively as an issue, it's just nothing. There's just nothing to it. And if the big bad of the whole thing ends up being Hector Hammond, so be it, but I don't care about it yet. They still need to work to make me care for it. So, yeah. Aquaman number 18, written by Geoff Johns, art by Paul Pelletier. So last issue basically was Aquaman reaffirming, hey, I'm gonna be a good king. And then we see this other crazy ass dude coming out of a sea cave saying, oh no, I'm the real king. So we pick up Antarctica with this little science crew basically saying like, geez, good thing we're in Antarctica. Like all this crazy stuff's going on in up there with like gorillas and floods and whatnot. Antarctica seems like the safe place. And then all of a sudden, there's an ice quake and the entire base starts to collapse. One of the guys falls into the crevice and is killed near immediately. And we see the Atlantean king from before come up and kill the other scientist. So he's on the march. So then we get just sort of a montage of Aquaman and all the other Atlanteans going around the surface world, the humans, and gathering up Atlantean weapons. And we have Merc narrating, and he's like, look, I don't get it. How these humans, like, yeah, we thought they were, like, vicious to us, but, like, they're vicious to each other. Like, they're using these weapons to murder each other and enslave each other. Like, humans are just awful, Aquaman, and you're telling me that they're going to come after us? Like, and Aquaman's like, no. Look, there are bad ones. There's a lot of bad ones. And yes, that's mostly the ones that you've met so far. But, like, not all of them are awful. It's like, okay, well, I'm not feeling that. I'm thinking that, the surface world is dangerous. And Aquaman tells Merc, look, imagine yourself as like a little boy living in Boston. All they know about Atlanteans is that you flooded their city and then came out of the water and killed everyone who was still breathing. Can you see how that's, they're good Atlanteans, but that's all they know. And Merc's like, okay, well, I'm not going to learn anything here, so whatever. And he walks off. And then Arthur is made aware that Orm's sister is waiting for him in the throne room. And she goes to visit her. Her name is Tula, and she's Orm's, I believe, half-sister, based off the conversation, which means she shares no blood with Arthur at all. But she's basically saying, oh, yes, hello, King Arthur, blah, blah, blah. I've done all you wanted. We got a bunch of weapons, Atlantean weapons, sealed away. We've reclaimed and disposed of all those weapons. But I'm not here in that regard. I'm here about my brother. And basically saying, look, they're going to execute him. What are you going to do? And he's like, I'm not going to, if they want to charge him, they want to find him guilty, whatever, but I'm not going to let him die. Like, he will not be harmed. And he's like, all right, fair enough. And Tula makes the point that Volko is currently also set to be on trial. He betrayed the Atlantean people, but he knows where all of these weapons are being sold from and to. Like, he's been around the surface world. He knows about that stuff, so it's probably best to go ask him. And as she goes away, Aquaman looks at the throne that he has yet to officially govern from, and he's debating joining. Then we cut to Mara's story. And last issue, Mara got arrested, sort of, kind of, because she caused the scene the last time. She was, like, getting dog food or whatever. And the cops are basically saying, like, look, you kind of just left in the middle of stuff because there were things going on, but you still committed a crime and you need to be held accountable for it. And she's like, I'm not going to serve jail. I'm a representative of Atlantis. I have to feed my dog. I'm out. And so she goes to leave. And the cops are like, look, if you walk out, it's going to be resisting arrest, and that's going to be worse for everybody. And she's like, what do you mean everybody? Seems like it'd be worse for you. So then we cut back down to Atlantis. Arthur's going down to the prisons so that he can talk to Volko. And one of the guards is like, hey, when that missile hit, a bunch of my friends died. And now that we know that's Volko's fault, can you tell us when we're going to charge this son of a bitch and, like, get him into trial? And he's like, it's happening. It's going to happen soon, but I just need to talk to him right now. So he goes, talks to Volko. Volko's like, oh, my king. And he's like, no, you don't get to, you're a dick. You're a dick and I don't like you anymore. And Volko's like, fair enough, but I'm still going to tell you whatever you need to know. And Aquaman basically tells him, okay, where's the weapons coming from? It's like, oh, there's a guy up there. He's the one who's selling these weapons and whatnot. His name is Peter Mortimer. And Aquaman recognizes the name, calls him the Scavenger, and then just leaves. And Volko's like, come back anytime. I love you. What? Who said that? So then we see the Scavenger. They are gathering a bunch of Atlantean weapons. One of them, like, flips a switch accidentally, which turns his buddy into slime. And then we see Peter step out and it's just like, yeah, raise the price on that one an extra 50 grand. That one's going to be worth something. All right, are we good to go? And they're like, sort of, kind of, but the Atlantean people are going to find us soon. They've been coming after all the weapons. And Peter's like, that's the point. We're going to find one of these searching parties and follow them to Atlantis. Then we're going to get the big payoff. So then, last couple pages here, We have Tula talking to Merc in secret, and apparently Merc still believes that Orm should be the rightful king, and Tula presenting the news that Arthur isn't going to let any harm come to Orm. He's like, good. So that means that we can still take him and put him back onto that throne. We're going to save your brother ourselves. So then we cut back to Mara, and Mara, as she's walking out, gets handcuffed by the police. It's just like, Dad, tried to take you in peacefully, but now you're forcing me to cuff you and put you through the process normally. And then this one officer comes up named Officer Watson. She apparently went to school with Arthur, and she's like, look, I know that things are done differently there. I get it. I know that you've done amazing things with like the Justice League and Arthur. You've saved our lives more times than we can count. No judge is ever going to convict you, but you just got to go along with the rule of law. You got to like be a part of society here, okay? So can you just work with us? And she's like, fine, I will. But before anything can happen, they're attacked by a giant like snow blast, and the snow seemingly like freezes all of them. And we see whoever's causing it says, Daughter of Zebel, you will lead me to your people, and the seven seas will be mine again. So already the old king is here. He's made his way from Antarctica to, I think it's like Massachusetts, and like nobody noticed in the meantime. Sure, why not? I like it. I think it's a solid issue. I think it does a good job. It's setting up the political intrigue of, there's people on Arthur's side, there's people against Arthur. You got the whole weapons thing going on. It's setting up just more of a political story rather than just, oh, big monster, let's punch him. Mind you, the dead king or whatever his name's going to end up being, yeah, that's just big monster going to have to punch him. But they could turn it into a political thing as well, because clearly he was king at one point. So, I don't know. I'm intrigued. I'm interested to see where it goes. Overall, I'd give this one an 8. I think it's solidly written throughout. I like the moments where Arthur just unloads on Vulko because, he can. He's having a stressful day, and he's like, nah, you're the cause of all this. You made my life so much harder. You suck. I like it. It just shows a little bit of humanity there. So, yeah, 8 for this. Really am enjoying it. Looking forward to the next issue. The Fury of Firestorm, The Nuclear Men, number 18, written and art by Dan Jurgens. So last issue, Ronnie came home and found out his mom was kidnapped by someone who knows he's Firestorm. That's it. That's the story. This issue picks up following Relay and Skull Crusher, who were two of the villains from like an arc ago, and they're breaking into a Q-Core facility to try to get the new Q-Phone and sell it on the black market. But as they're breaking open the safe, Firestorm busts out, just doing his best Batman. Where is she? And they have no idea what he's talking about. It's like, where's my mom? I mean, Mrs. Raymond. I mean, my mom. And they're like, we don't kidnap people. Like, we're just here to steal a phone. I don't know what you're even talking about, kid. And Jason's in his head like, it seems like they're telling the truth. And it's like, all right, well, either way, I could still fight them, let off some steam. So he transmutes Skull Crusher's outfit into a baby diaper with a comically large safety pin holding it together. And then he threatens Relay with turning her hair into barbed wire. And she's just like, okay, like, seriously? But, like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you please not do that? And Skull Crusher says, oh, yeah, if we knew somebody close to you, we wouldn't just kidnap her, we'd kill her. And then Firestorm punches him in the face. And then we get the whole flashback to like, okay, how did we get here? Turns out Ronnie called Jason and his dad, and they see the writing on the wall in blood, and they're like, oh, we got to call the cops. It's like, no, to call the cops, and they're going to figure out this is Firestorm, and then the military will find out. And then Tanya shows up saying, oh my God, I just heard the news. Is everything fine? And Ronnie's like, no, it's not, Tanya. I could use a hug. So then they try to just basically go through, okay, who knows that we are Firestorm and therefore would have the ability to kidnap your mom and know this? And they say, all right, well, there was a whole last arc. These are all the people who might have known. And they realize the only people left are like Relay and Skull Crusher, who they think are in military custody, but it turns out they escaped. So they figured, let's do that. And now we cut to a completely different thing where is Ronnie's actual mom? And it turns out she's in a warehouse inside like an office cubicle in the middle of the warehouse where all the doors are locked, except for a door that's in the room with her. She's okay, just to really say here, she's been here for hours. Then she hears a noise in what is the closet of this office, and she's like, oh, is there someone in there? And she opens it and it's unlocked. And you'd think maybe if she's been in there for hours, she would have tried that door at some point. I know it's minuscule, but it is on the same page. So I really don't understand how they got away with that. But either way, there's a dude in there. He's tied up. He's like, oh, I got jumped in a parking lot. My name's Rick. I don't know what's happening here. And so they're basically just trying to figure out a way out of here. Rick pulls out a drawer from one of the desks, smashes it against the doorknob, which opens up the door. And then they see all these guys in black outfits out there. And they all start attacking Rick and Ronnie's mom. And Ronnie gets to her phone and is like, oh, I'm going to call Ronnie and he'll send his quote-unquote friend. So then we see this shadowy organization who's looking on at all this, and they're like, oh, this is taking too long. We need Firestorm now. And someone's like, oh, but Multiplex said that he could get him to show up. So we'll just wait for Multiplex to do his thing. So at that point, Tanya and Jason's mom or Jason's dad are just kind of tired of hanging around. Jason's dad makes the small talk of, so you and my son, are you like a thing? And Tanya's like, I don't really want to discuss that with you. And as they're about to call the cops, Firestorm shows back up and it's just like, okay, don't call the cops. Stop trying to do that. We got to figure out a new lead. And then Jason's dad's phone rings and is like, oh, tell Ronnie to run the GPS on my phone and follow it here. Which, if that was a thing the whole time, why did he not do that first? But regardless, we move on. So he does the GPS. He makes his way over to the warehouse. He busts in. He starts knocking out the guys in the black suits, who, of course, are Multiplex. And as they knock out one of them, all the rest of them disappear. And he's like, oh, tell me where my mom, Mrs. Raymond is, or I'm going to knock you out again. He's like, oh, he's under the tarp. So they lift off the tarp. They know it's a trap, but they got to do it anyway. And inside is Rick and the mom hooked up to this big machine that seemingly is making them sick. And so they're like, we don't know how to disable the machine. Ronnie's like, I don't care. I'm going to start blasting it. What if you do something wrong? I don't know. I'll turn it into like toilet paper. No one would expect that. So he starts turning the machine into different materials, and something is happening, and it's pulling the energy out of Firestorm. And then finally Rick is like, oh, geez, that took way too long. I finally got all the energy I need. And he unhooks himself from the machine, and it turns out his name is Dalton Black. And Jason's like, I remember this guy. He worked as an assistant to Dr. Stein, and he was trying to sell all of the stuff on like the black market. He's evil. And he's like, yeah, and I used Stein's work in order to try to give myself powers. But whereas it allows you guys to do fusion, it allows me to do fission. And I can split myself up into multiplex. But now I need more of your energy because the half-life of my clones is getting shorter and shorter. So I'm going to use your energy to stay alive longer. And then all in the course of like one panel, Jason's like, I know how to beat him. We just got to throw more energy at him that he can handle. And so he does. And then Multiplex is like, oh no, this is totally too much for me. And he just keels over and like seemingly dies. So then Ronnie gets his mom out, says, hey, it's all good. Nothing can stop us now. And then we see the shadowy organization still watching, saying, all right, everyone go get Firestorm now. Okay. So if it wasn't obvious by the way I was recounting some of the issues in there, this book has issues. This book has problems with just basic logic. If her phone had a GPS the whole time, why didn't he track it to begin with? If there was a door that was unlocked in this room, why didn't she check that for hours? I feel like the Raymond family just kind of has some mental deficiencies where they don't think about the most obvious thing to do in a situation. But regardless, it apparently carries over to characters like Multiplex as well. Because, oh, I made this thing to drain your energy, and I never thought, hey, wait, what happens if too much energy? Golly, Seems like that would be something that would be like, hey, make sure I get at least 5 volts and not more than 5 million. Check. Done. You built this whole crazy ass machine to drain energy and you didn't think, oh, what happens if too much? Ugh. Not a great issue. Not a good one, even. So overall, I'll give it a... I'm just going to give it a flat 5. And I know that seems like it may be high for something that I'm, like, actually upset with. But... you know what? No buts. In saying that sentence, I now realize I'm bringing it down to, like, a 4. I'm actually upset with it. I don't like the fact that this just all kind of wrapped up in this neat little bow. And I know they're setting up this future thing, but, like... this story has wrapped. This is done. And it was all very poorly done. Maybe this is the point where he found out Firestorm was getting canceled and he had to like put a little bow on it super quick. But no, it's just lazy in a lot of ways. And I don't like it. So 4. The Flash, number 18, written by Brian Buccellato, and the internet says Francis Manapul too, but this book begs to differ, and art by Marcio Takara. So we open up in Keystone City, middle of the night, a diamond store. The door just explodes, security guard goes flying and is killed, and then someone breaks in and steals some diamonds. So that happens, and then we get back to the Flash, and it turns out after the events of Gorilla City and all that stuff, he's going around, he's like hooking up electrical cables, he's building playgrounds, he's doing just normal, helpful things rather than superhero things of punching people, and he even says so. He's like, yeah, this is, even though I feel a little bit less for wear, I still feel like I'm doing the right thing. And so then he runs his way home, and he's living with Patty now, and Patty's like, hey, you're here on time, I got takeout, and they share a moment with each other, but then Barry's like, the only thing that's wrong is that I don't have my normal forensic job back yet. He's still working down at the bar where all the rogues show up. And as he arrives for his shift, he sees that the Trickster is in there. And he's like, well, I mean, it's a good way to stay up on what they're doing. So he starts making conversation with the Tricksters. He's like, oh, so what kind of work do you do? He's like, oh, I don't know. You're building a team? You're looking for somebody to crack some safes? Because I'm really good at that. And Flash is just thinking, wow, they really love incriminating themselves. But as they're just sitting there, the police come in with a arrest warrant for Trickster and say it's for robbery and murder of that diamond store that we saw before. And Axel's like, I'm not a murderer. I didn't kill nobody. And Flash is like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't. He does not seem the type to kill people. But as he's forced to get back to his job, Trickster manages to escape the police. He flies off via jetpack shoes, and Flash is like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And his boss is like, no, you're not. You're going to fill up these drinks first, and then you can go to the bathroom. So he does that, and while Flash is having to do that, Trickster is actually attacked by Sprint and Turbocharger, who are Gomez and I think Albert, who were 2 of the randos that were stuck in the Speed Force for the past, 10 issues. And they apparently got some superpowers out of it, where Sprint is apparently somewhat fast and Turbocharger has a bike or something. I'm a little unclear on his powers. But regardless, Trickster manages to throw a bomb, forces Sprint off his game, and Sprint's almost hit by 2 police cars, but Flash comes in, tells him, hey, stay here, stay out of the way. And we see Turbocharger is almost caught into, well, he is caught in one of Trickster's nets, and his flying bike starts coming out of the sky. Flash makes a nice little pile of tables for him to fall into, break his fall. And as they Sprint and Turbocharger catch back up, they're like, all right, let's go take down Trickster. We see Flash has already done it. And he's like, hey, guys, I'm thinking we need to have a talk. So he takes them to a park and just like, okay, so you guys got superpowers. I've invited Iris West and Barry Allen to show up as well because I just need to know, you guys who were stuck in the Speed Force, do you all have powers now? Is that a thing that's happening? And he's like, I mean, we just want to be a new superhero team, Flash. I'm Sprint, this is Turbocharger, and we want you to join our team called the Speed Force. And Flash is like, I'm already on a team, and I don't have time to babysit you. You guys need to, handle stuff small, like kittens and trees, before you go after people like the Rogues. It's a bit of a step up for you. And at that point, Iris arrives along with what's his name, Gomez's girlfriend, and the girlfriend's like, I can't believe you went out and did this. I thought that this was just some sort of fantasy of yours. I can't believe that you went out and risked your life. And as they're chewing each other out and all that, Sprint is really locked into it. Albert kind of second guesses. He's like, maybe you're right. Maybe superheroing is a bad idea. But as Sprint is storming off, they get a ping on their phone that the Outlanders are making an ultimatum. And the Outlanders is the family, the group outside of Keystone City that Trickster basically fell in with. And it's like, hey, he's one of us, not one of you. He's not subject to your laws. Release him now or we will attack Blackgate Prison. And Barry comes and visits the old forensic department because he's like, well, I just need a couple facts on the case so that I can get off Axel. But as he's there, Director Singh comes in and is like, Barry, hey, these guys need to work on the whole Trickster case, and you're not allowed to be here, so get out. And before he leaves, Patty points to where the case file is so Barry can take it and get a look at it. And Barry's looking over it and just like, yeah, none of this matches up with Trickster's normal MO. The only thing here is that they used an explosive, and I know Trickster uses some trick bombs, but it doesn't seem like the right mixture, so I'm just going to go talk to him about it. So he goes into Blackgate, he talks to Trickster, and Trickster's like, no, I didn't mix up my bomb formula at all. It's the same as it ever was. I didn't do this. And Flash is like, fair enough, I'm working on a case for you, but like, can you please call off your friends so they don't launch an assault on this prison? Trickster's like, what? If they're going to spring me, they're going to spring me. They're my family now. It's who I'm chilling with. And Flash is like, they're not going to spring you. They're all going to get shot. Please do not let this be a big loss of life. And Trickster's like, whatever. So at that point, Barry checks out Trickster's bombs and it's like, yep, okay, these aren't messed with. But then the Outlanders show up and they're like, this is their last chance, we're coming in. So Flash is like, all right, I just got to phase through this wall and then they'll be right outside waiting and I can take them all out. And as he runs towards the wall, he doesn't phase through and he's immediately, all of his powers disappear. And he's like, what in the hell is happening? And then it says tune in to Dial H, the next issue of that, which I believe is issue 12? No, 11. Didn't expect this to cross over into Dial H. Gotta tell you, that's a wide shot for me. But I guess that's where Barry's powers went to some extent. We'll see next week on that. But regardless, I think this issue was a fine setup to the arc. I don't know how long it's going to be because this trade at least is betraying the fact that it's only got like 1 or 2 issues left. I am interested to see, we got the classic superheroes depowered and they still have a crisis. How are they going to solve it? I'm interested to see how Barry will do it. He's currently in the armory of the prison. So if we see Flash locked and loaded, I'm going to be super interested in that. But overall, it was a fine issue. It was written well. It was drawn well. It's just setting up the new status quo of, okay, post-Gorilla City, where is everything? With the biggest change being that Flash is living with Patty, and they have a next step in their relationship kind of brewing. So I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to give this one I'll give it an 8.5. I really did enjoy it. I can't say it did anything that like super amazing, but just all the parts working together, I think it did a really good job. The only thing that I'm a little concerned on is the quote-unquote Speed Force, the team that they're making. It has a chance to really stumble if they hold on it for too long, but for right now, I'm interested in seeing how these low-level superheroes kind of deal with just smaller crime stuff. It's nice to see. Savage Hawkman number 18, written by Tom DeFalco, art by Joe Bennett and Fabrizio Fiorentino. Last issue, there was some alien tech, and there was a bomb on a boat, and Shadow Thief and Hawkman were maybe both blown up. Of course, they weren't, though. And this issue opens up with Hawkman in a deep, dark place, and he's like, oh god, I can't see or feel anything. Is this death? Am I dead? And then Shadow Thief's like, no, you ain't dead. This is just some weird shadow realm thing that I have to go through in using my suit. So it turns out there are also a bunch of, like, the best way I can describe it is Stranger Things-esque creatures in this world that are trying to kill them constantly. And she can't control them, so they just have to make their way through to find a portal out of here. And we see the previous people that she's brought in here are just dead and completely torn apart. And Shadow Thief's like, whatever, they're casualties of war. And Hawkman's like, I don't know what you're doing, but that's just murder. And she's like, no, we're in a war. Their people die in war. I'm just a soldier in it. So either way, if you want to get out of here, portal's this way. Let's go. So then we got back to the real world, and Emma, I believe her name is. Yes, Emma's calling Hawkman, Carter, because she really needs him to be around while she tries to figure out what to do about her father, who is, he has dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that. And the father realizes that she's upset, and he's like, hey, I may not know everything that's going on, but I know this is about me and my situation, so I know you'll make the right decision regarding that, honey. And we see that there is a little brochure for a hospice or something like that in her bag. Cut back to the Shadow world. They're basically saying, okay, Shadow Thief, tell me more about you. And she's like, all right, I was a thief. I worked for a small nation that had a bunch of enemies. I went around killing people and stealing stuff, but then eventually I had this one job going on where they wanted me to steal something from a bank, and it just felt weird. And when I opened up the thing, which I have never done before, inside was the shadow skin, and it allows me to fight and do all this shadow stuff powers. And she decided that aliens are a threat. And so she is stopping all alien weaponry and such to be sold and traded. And she's just all up on aliens. And she says, that's why I wage war against alien invaders, their technology, and their dupes. And then Hawkman's like, okay, that's awkward. So then back to the Rest Haven Medical Facility, which is the hospice that she was looking for. There's a guy in there named Mark who's just freaking out. And he's being strapped down by a doctor, and the doctor says, hey, Mark, you got to stop freaking out. Science comes at a cost. And he injects him with some glowing green substance that Mark seems not too happy with. Then we cut back into Shadow World again, and Shadow Thief's like, okay, Hawkman, tell me your story. And he's like, okay, well, I was a minor noble. I got into a gladiator arena because people didn't like me that much. The Emperor himself granted me a pardon, and he brought me into his house, and then I saw how evil the ruling classes were, and therefore I was exiled off Thanagar. Which, can I just say, this is the third origin we've gotten for Hawkman in this book itself, and I still think they all disagree with each. This one disagrees less, but it's still disagreeing with everything we saw before, and I think it was Liefeld's run, so whatever. Either way, he says the word Thanagar, and Shadow Thief's like, you're an alien! And she straight up tries to kill him, and he's like, no, I'm not, I'm fighting for humanity here. And she's like, well, I don't trust you. I don't trust any sort of alien. So they keep on attacking each other. And Hawkman's using his nth metal as best he can, but it is actually not able to attack a literal shadow. And at that point, the monsters start attacking again, and Hawkman's like, okay, can we call for a truce while we beat the monsters? So then we follow Emma as she's visiting the Rest Haven facility. Mark answers the door, and he seems fine. He's just a little bit, out of it. And the doctor there, named Dr. Fane, he's like, oh, yes, Mark is one of our most successful patients. We do more than just care for dementia. We actually try to treat it here. And how can I help you, Ms. Emma? So back in the Shadow World, the monsters are attacking, and Hawkman's trying to convince Shadow Thief, hey, look, we can work together. Only you can get us home. Just let me fight him off. And she's like, I don't need your help. So at that point, one of them goes to spear Shadow Thief, and Hawkman manages to jump in the way, which convinces her, no, I will not be shackled by such a sacrifice. And Hawkman's like, hey, I'm actually fine. The nth metal's healing me. No big deal. Also, I'm going to fight back the monsters. And Shadow Thief's like, okay, all right. I guess at the very least you've earned a portal out of here. So they hold hands and go through a portal. And when they get to the other side, it looks like Shadow Thief's ready to fight again. And Hawkman's like, I'm ready for it if you are. Shadow Thief's like, nah, I can kill you whenever I want. Peace. And she leaves. So then Hawkman, he goes back into his apartment, transforms out of his nth metal. There's a knock at the door. It's Emma. And Emma's like, hey, I've been calling you. Where you been? And he's like, I was Hawkman stuff. And she's like, fair enough. Sorry. Didn't mean to jump on you. However, I do need you to be there for me. And if you can't even answer your phone, then it's going to come down to the choice of either me or Hawkmaning. And that's where it leaves off. I understand this is a stressful time for Emma where, you know, she needs Carter by her side, but they wrote her really whiny here, and we're, as the reader, supposed to empathize with Carter, and, like, you know, he's our audience avatar, more or less. So the fact that she comes in, she's like, you have to choose between being a hero and being with me. It's like, okay, but we haven't really seen you guys been in that much of a relationship yet, and you kind of blew him off last issue too. It just kind of felt like this is a non-choice and just designed to make us not like Emma, you know? Either way, the issue itself is okay. It's more so just origin story for Shadow Thief and saying, oh, are they enemies? Are they friends? Are they frenemies? Yes to the last one. And while I enjoy that, it does feel completely disjointed with the issue that happened before, because wasn't there a whole thing of a weapons trade, and Xerxes was there, and there was a bunch of other stuff, and we just completely glossed over that? And then next issue it says, and Blockbuster's showing up, which means, are we just done with Xerxes? I'm not complaining, but that was a very stupid way to go. So overall, I'll give this one a 6. Not great, not standout. It's still at least interesting in what they're doing with Shadow Thief. Not that I think it's actually going to matter for very much longer, but hey, at least they're doing something. All-Star Western number 18, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. Last issue, we had a virus, I think it's a cholera, but it's basically a zombie virus going around Gotham. Whole section of the city's walled off, and Vandal Savage kidnapped Catherine Wayne, I think it was, and Jonah was sent in to go rescue her. So they're being chased, Jonah and Dr. Arkham, by a bunch of these sick people, and they're trying to make their way to a safe place. Yes, it was Catherine Wayne, by the way. And so they see a bar nearby, and Jonah's like, all right, that place will be safe. We got to get in there. And Arkham's like, this is hardly the time for a drink. And so he's like, I hate you, Arkham. And he grabs him and throws him in through the window, tells him to find a trap door underneath a rug behind the bar. And Arkham's like, I can't believe this was here. I've lived in this city for all my life. How did you know this was here? And Arkham's like, and Hex just tells him to shut up. And as they make their way down there, they close the lid. They're finally safe. And we see down there is a dwarf, I guess, named Blackburn, who's got a gun trained on Hex. And he's like, oh, hey, didn't expect you to be here, Hex. What's up? And Blackburn asks Hex if this is like a rescue thing. He's like, nope, I actually just came here to try to stay safe. Good to see you, though, Blackburn. And they're looking for Catherine. Blackburn has no idea what's going on. He's been down here for a month, along with this lady who, I think they name her Mill. She's got a child swaddled up in rags, but then as it's revealed later, when all this disease broke out, her actual baby died, and this is just a doll that is meant to stop her from grieving, which, you know, questionable morals there. But either way, Blackburn, Hex, and Arkham make their way to a back room in order to talk. And Hex is like, all right, I need a few bottles of booze. Can you give me anything? And he's like, nope, not really. But I'll give you everything you can carry if you can get us out of here. And Hex is like, nah, no good, can't do that. So Blackburn's like, all right, look, I can give you some German hunting pistols, which are just normal pistols with swords on the ends, it seems, because this guy is actually like a gun runner, and he had someone in Gotham to sell to, but now they're dead, so it's just dead weight for him. So he's willing to give it up for Hex in return for something. I'm genuinely unsure as to what. But regardless, we see that Vandal Savage is taking Catherine. He's planning on taking her out of the city under cover of a blizzard, and basically saying like, I want you to convince your husband to give us all of his assets in return for you. And she's like, my husband will never do that. That's stupid for you even suggesting. It's like, fair. I'll kill your husband then, and I'll take his assets. And he's like, it's not going to work. What do you want? And he's like, oh, I have a plan for power among these United States. So at that point, a bunch of wolves start attacking. And Vandal's like, oh yeah, this is my kind of town. This is what I'm up to. And he starts slashing at them with a sword and basically monologuing to Catherine saying, oh, I've seen things you wouldn't imagine. I am older than you could possibly deal with. I have fathered more children and I have outlived all of them. And I'm wondering why you and your husband never fathered any children. I'm hoping it's because he's infertile, so that way you can have one of my children. And Catherine's like, you're a creep, man. So she goes off running as he's fighting off the wolves. She sees some dead bodies frozen underneath the ice and freaks out. And then Arkham comes up and grabs him, being like, hey, we got you. You're safe. We got to go now, though. And as they're running their way out, and it turns out Blackburn and Mill did accompany them, Vandal shows up and just be like, hey, you killed a lot of people, Savage. And he's like, yeah, they were in my way. And Hex tells him, well, you're in my way now. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's see how you do it. So he fires off a few shots at Savage. Savage deflects them with a sword and is like, I could have chosen to deflect those back into your body, Hex. You can't possibly outfight me. I'm greater than you could possibly imagine. And then Hex just fires off a shotgun and it lands in Vandal's chest. And he's like, all right, well, shut up. So he picks up Vandal's sword, takes it with him, and they get out of... They get Catherine to safety. So then we see that the body of Vandal Savage is taken to a pile of dead bodies who all died of the virus. But of course, he didn't die. He comes back to life, and we don't know where he goes after that. But then, some days pass. We go back to Arkham's mansion. Arkham's looking for Jonah, but he's nowhere to be found. He goes to his mother, and the mother's like, oh yeah, he said he was leaving, going out west. And Arkham's like, I'm sorry, he left and he told you, but he didn't tell me? What a dick. So at that point, we see Hex is making his way to a train out west. He gets himself onto one of the rooms. He rolls himself a cigarette. And then Arkham walks in and he's like, oh, I did some asking around town and pulled some favors, and I found out that you were taking this train west. I've always wanted to see the west myself, and I know you wouldn't want to go without me. So anyway, let's get going. And at that point, Hex pulls out his gun and says, you have 10 seconds to get out of here, or I'm going to shoot you in the head. And we see straight up Fresh Prince style, Arkham is thrown off the train with all of his stuff, and he's like, oh, this isn't fair. I paid for my ticket. Oh, well, after all we've been through, this is how you leave me? And one of the guys on the street's like, hey, it's okay. You're going to find love again in this city. Gotham's a great place for love. And Arkham's like, no, it's nothing like that. And he's like, right, sure it isn't. Wink, wink. And then that's the book. So, yeah, Arkham is no longer with Hex. We've just thrown him off the train and we're done with them. I gotta say, I feel like this book has been looking for a reason to ditch Arkham this whole time. Like, since maybe the second arc, it's felt like Hex is like, I don't want him here. And it finally reached a point where I don't think the writers could justify it any longer. So they made sure to make Arkham especially useless in this issue and then just throw him off, which I think it was funny. I think it was well done. If you're attached to the character, it's probably a letdown, but I wasn't that attached, so whatever. Overall, a bit of a letdown in terms of the Vandal Savage story, where it's just, we shot him a few times, it didn't work, and then we shot him and it did work. Okay, I mean, I guess with a shotgun, but still, it seemed a bit weak. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 6.5. It's fine. It's not great. You know what? A 7. 7 it only gets that extra half point because I do really enjoy the art style in this. And I remember parts of this book where it was basically written in prose, and I'm glad they toned that down. They at least made it so when someone's giving a monologue, they're saying the monologue rather than just the narrator in general. So yeah, I'll give it a 7. It's an okay issue, but it seems like we're making some big shakeups with the next one, so we'll see where that goes. Teen Titans number 18, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Eddie Barrows and Rodney Buscemi. It's I don't even know where to begin with this one. I guess it would be that it is technically a Requiem issue dealing with the death of Damian, but like only in the vaguest sense. So we open with Tim Drake. He's crying over the death of Damian, and he's saying like, "Oh yes, death looks over all of us superheroes, all of us in the Bat family, and just welcomes us when timing is most inconvenient." And we see that that Damian is on top of the Batmobile, I guess, that Tim is sitting in as he's crying and just being like, "Jesus, Tim, pull it together. You didn't even like me that much." And Tim is just hallucinating Damian there, and Damian's saying things like, "Just say you didn't like me as Robin, that you didn't want me to be Robin, and now you get to be Robin again. It's whatever, man." And Tim just breaks down just like, "Nah, you shouldn't have been Robin. You were 10. You were 10 years old. You should not have been put into that life. There needs to be somebody who protects you. That's why I started the Teen Titans, in order to protect us superhero kids, because the Justice League isn't going to care about us." And so Damian, in his hallucination, also breaks down and hugs him, says like, "Do it, Tim. Save all of us superhero kids." So then Alfred enters the Batcave and he's like, "Tim, what in the hell are you doing?" As he's just hugging the air. And Alfred's like, "Okay, I get you're grieving. That's cool. But maybe right now you shouldn't be alone. I'm so happy that you have your team, the Teen Titans, that you've opened up to and have shared your grief with." And Tim's like, "Actually, they don't even know my real name." And Alfred's like, "Okay, maybe you should not keep that secret." And then Tim hugs him and just like, "Oh, okay, I'm glad you understand you're not alone." So that point, back on the yacht, Superboy shows up and he's just flying over top of everyone. And he's like, "Hey guys, I just got back from hell on Earth." And they're like, "Hey, that's cool. Could you maybe land? We're trying to keep some secret identities under wraps." And he's like, "Oh, right, I forgot you guys do that. Sorry." So he lands down and Cassie makes the remark of like, "Oh, and everyone has their secrets." And then both her and Solstice are like that I made out with Red Robin last issue. Tee-hee. And so then Superboy's like, "Hey, I never officially got inducted to the Teen Titans, and now that I'm done with a bunch of that other stuff, is it cool if I'm with you?" And Red Robin's like, yes, that is cool." And everyone's like, "Shouldn't we have a vote or something like that?" And he's like, no. And I need you all in your work uniforms and downstairs in 5. So then they come down into what is essentially the battle room for, where he has all of his computers and stuff. And he welcomes him in and says like, "Here's the thing. Since we've been to Teen Titans, 4 teenagers with powers have died. That is unacceptable. We're going to go and protect them seriously now." And everyone's like, "Do we have a say in this?" And it's like, either you're in or you're out. Call it whatever you want. So at that point, he figured everyone would probably be in. So he is moving the ship out to sea, where they're then going to take a helicopter and try to free a kidnapped girl named Tabitha Muntz. And she is currently fighting someone. And we get the glimpse on the screen of who it is. They don't know who it is, but it turns out that it's the same guy who gave Solstice the ability to change out of her form and control her powers. And I'm blanking on his name right now. It's Lance. It is Kurt Lance. That's it. So at that point, Solstice is like, "Should I tell them that I know him? I don't know." So either way, we then cut to several blocks away at the United Nations. Oh, and by the way, all this is going to be at Belle Reve. They're going to the Suicide Squad, but that'll be later. So anyway, they go to the United Nations. Some other group goes, and turns out that they are this pair of brothers are currently breaking in to get information on the true identity of Solstice, whose name is Kiran Singh, and we see her in her human form, and they're like, "Okay, we're going to use her and absorb her powers because she's made of light and I'm made of light, so then the whole world's going to see light." Because this is the guy from the beginning of the last issue that was all light or whatever. Anyway, cut to Belle Reve. Amanda Waller's looking for Kurt Lance. She doesn't know where he is either. And then all of a sudden, alarm bells go off. Someone breaking into Belle Reve. We see Harley, Deadshot, and Killer Shark are regarding answering the alarm. And as they see the Teen Titans, they're like, oh, they're so cute and tiny. I kind of just want to keep one as a pet. What are you going to do to us? And Superboy lands a punch on, it is King Shark. I don't know why they call him Killer Shark in this. It's definitely King Shark. And then Flash is out running Deadshot's bullets. So, it's just a standard-ass fight scene. But then Robin makes his way towards Amanda Waller. She pulls a gun on him, and he's just like, look, I know you've been looking for us. I know you've been tailing us. What do you want? And she's like, oh, I just want to know about your field trip to nowhere and all that sort of stuff. So what's going on? She's like, look, I'm here strictly because I'm here to cut a deal with you. And he gives that weird, creepy smile he gave at the last issue. And he says, this will be for the benefit of everyone. So the fight's continuing outside, and everyone is just up on each other until Waller and Red Robin come out and it's like, hey, everyone stop. We cut a deal. They can go. And Waller tells Tim, like, you just got the worst side of this deal. Even if you don't realize it, one day you're going to regret it. And Tim's like, oh, well, that's what you don't understand. We don't trust anybody. So we know this deal isn't going to stand. And Kid Flash is like, hey, didn't we come here to, like, save a girl? And Red Robin's just like, there was no girl. I'll explain later. So then we go out to Times Square where that dude who can kill people with a thought kills a cab driver who nearly hits him with a thought. And then everyone looks up at the sky and Trigon shows up riding a two-headed horse. And he says, kneel before the power of Trigon. Okay. The first 3 pages are good. Where Tim has a mental breakdown and is like grieving over the loss of another Robin. Yeah, I like that. That was fine. Pretty much everything after that point, though, seems stupid. I mean, the Superboy thing was okay, and the fact that they were going to rescue a girl is okay, but then you work in the Suicide Squad, you work in this weird fact that Tim is, like, maybe evil now. I don't know. And then the whole, like, oh, yeah, we're stealing the identity of Kieran from this United Nations filing cabinet, and it's the issue of he's running too many plots at once. And this has always been an issue in this book where he just has like 50 things he wants to do and doesn't just focus on any one of them. He's got to set up 3 plots from now, right now. So, yeah, no, I'm just annoyed with it. I'm barely remembering the Trigon plot and that guy who can kill people with his brain and the guy made of light plots all at the same time because I'm more interested in the Tim plot because you've given me information on that character. I am attached to that character. If you want me to care about the other ones, spend time with them. Sorry. I just really am annoyed at this book. So I'm going to give this one I'm going to give it like a 2.5. It's just a disconnected mess. And I'm sure in the end it's going to come together to be something. But issue to issue, that doesn't make this any better. Knowing that there's a finish line doesn't make this horrible part of it any more endurable. So yeah, giving it like a 2.5. I'm sick of this writing style and I want it to stop. I, Vampire, number 18, written by Joshua Helfialkov, art by Fernando Blanco. So last issue, Kane is trying to bring back his girlfriend. Andrew killed John, and Tig just beheaded Mary. So we have this narration inside, I believe, by Kane. It's basically saying like, hey, I'm a big believer in love. I believe that love conquers all and love is magical. So I'm just trying to get back my lover. Is that so hard? And we see everybody basically dealing with their own stuff. Andrew is super pissed off that Tig just killed Mary. John and Deborah are coming down to see, and John Constantine, is coming down to see what is going on in the basement along with Kane. And they see that the portals have been opened and Kane is basically telling all of the souls in hell, hey, everyone come on, bring me my Lilith. I need Lilith right now. And we cut back to the fight between Andrew and Tig. Tig is now trying to kill Andrew because she found out that he's the one who killed her father and she is not taking it well. And Andrew is also not taking well the fact that Mary is dead. So they are locked into battle. They turn into their werewolf forms. And Andrew's like, I did so much for you. I gave you the world over and over, and you never quite understood your place in it, Tig. So please let me show you. And we see that he basically rips out her throat, and she tells him, I killed your bitch. That's enough for me. So yeah, Andrew kills Tig. Pretty much. So then we cut back to Kane, and Kane's like, hey, I don't see Lilith in all of the damned souls. What's going on? And Constantine's like, in my guess, she turned into dust. And vampires don't have souls. So, yeah, you ain't going to be able to find her. And then Constantine sees floating in the middle of these portals, both up and down, is this brick. And he's like, wait a minute, is that what I think it is? And the one book guy's like, yeah, it's a brick from the Tower of Babel. And it's like, oh, cool. So what you guys did is you opened up a portal to heaven and hell. And you guys are, and it's like, oh yeah, we're working with Andrew. And it's like, right, you guys are idiots. That's what you are. And Charles is like, I'm the greatest magician who ever lived. And the guy's like, I keep the books. And it's like, yeah, no, you guys are idiots. See, here's the thing. Portals to hell and portals to heaven open like all the time. Like probably more than they should. But they don't ever open like this. Because you guys have these portals linked to each other, it's tearing a hole in reality. And Deborah steps up like, okay, so how do we shut it off? And Constantine's like, I don't know. I have no idea how to shut this off. This seems pretty permanent to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the doors to the House of Mystery, and I'm going to send this house to another dimension, and they can deal with whatever hole in reality is going to do to them. So you have until I finish my cigarette if you want to try to figure a way out of this. Peace. And so he just like disappears into dust, and Deborah's like, okay, vampire guys, how do we want to fix this? And everyone's like, I mean, I could go for a bite to eat. Anybody else want to have a snack? And Deborah's like, oh, come on, guys, seriously? And Andrew shows up behind being like, hey, it looks like you're all alone, Deborah. All your friends have left you. Now I can either let them eat you or I can turn you. And I remember you were a very sexy girl vampire, which we are missing quite a few of nowadays. And Deborah says, I will kill you. And he's like, fair enough. Let's eat, boys. So at that point, though, one of them chimes up like, hey, real quick, they were saying something about tearing a hole in reality. Are we destroying the world? And Andrew's like, yeah. What about it? And it's like, well, you kind of said that we could rule the world. That was the thing we were going for. We wanted power. And it's like, no, we're destroying the world. Would you guys just listen to directions for once in your life? And so they start attacking Andrew because, you know, he was lied to them. He told them not to. But then Deborah manages to get knocked out from one of the magic beams. And Andrew steps up and it's just like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and kill you now, Deborah. And then we can see what happens after that. But then turns out Tig didn't die. She was very wounded, but she didn't die. And she manages to tear at the throat of Andrew. And Andrew throws her aside into the other two guys. And Kane's just like, hey, I'm also here. And wow, Andrew, you've got a lot of power. What? I remember you being so much of a little prissy boy. What's going on? And he's like, oh, well, I absorbed the souls of all the vampires. And he's like, I'm sorry, you said all the vampires? Oh, well, that answers my question then. And then he starts pulling all the souls of the vampires out of Andrew, puts them into a big old energy ball. And he's like, oh, there you are, Lilith. I knew you were here. I knew I could get you. But of course, then the portals link up and reality starts tearing apart. And Kane's like, well, this isn't going to end well. I would like some more time with Lilith. You, book guy, how do we stop this? And he's like, I don't know. I don't think we can. And Deborah steps up like, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Constantine said this isn't going to work. And so Kane's like, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to do it with my lover. So he takes the big ball of energy and throws it into Tig. And Tig seemingly dies like for real. But her body is repurposed into Lilith. And Lilith's like, oh, my love, I knew you would restore me. So they share an embrace. The portal explodes outwards. The book guy straight up dissolves. Kane starts dissolving, and Lilith and him are embracing. Magic guy puts up a bubble. Deborah's using the shield to defend herself, which apparently the magic's letting him do. And Andrew comes to, and he's like, oh, wait, what happened? What's going on? She's like, oh my God, you're the real Andrew. You're back again. And she kisses him. And he's like, oh no, I remember Mary and John and portal. I got to try to stop this. This is the best I can do. And so he lunges at the portal to stop it. But then a figure inside literally bitch slaps him away. And stepping out of it is Mary. And Mary's like, you have cost me everything I ever wanted, Andrew. You're not going to take away my martyrdom as well. And as she steps out, she's like totally naked and Andrew's staring. And we just get one last panel of Deborah being like, I'm standing right here, man. Come on. So, yeah, one more issue of this. Next issue is the final issue. I am going to miss this book so much. I love it. As for this one, I mean, there's not much to really say. It's setting up for the big final thing. I liked that they didn't technically beat Kane. Like, Kane just, I mean, maybe they'll beat him back next issue, but Kane in this particular one's just like, nah, I'm still here. I just wanted my wife. So, yeah, no, it's all around solid stuff. They're killing off characters. They're setting it up so this is actually a final confrontation. That's the thing. I feel like when you have this much of a corner of the universe that's removed from everything else, you can kill off these characters and they feel like they'll stay dead. It doesn't feel like there's just going to be, by the time this book is done, a reset button where, oh, it turns out nobody died. It's like, no, these people will remain dead. This book has consequences, and it's so rare to get that in mainline continuity of any sort of comic book. I appreciate it where I can get it. Art style, again, looks great. Still would have preferred Sorrentino, but who wouldn't, honestly? So overall, I'm going to give this one I'm going to give it an 8.5. It did a good job of managing to get Andrew back onto the good path without it feeling corny. Where it was like, Kane can control this ability, and so he just took it off of Andrew for his own self-serving needs. Not to make Andrew good, but that was just a consequence of it. I like it. I really do. So 8.5. Justice League Dark number 18, written by Jeff Lemire and Ray Fox, art by Miguel Jennings. So this is the final part of the Death of Magic. And last issue we had the attack from Tim Hunter and his magical army on the science people. All the worlds are being torn apart, and more directly, Constantine and crew are jumping out of an exploding building. And we see all that stuff still going on, as well as the part in the real world, quote unquote, where Tim Hunter's dad is going to cross over to tell them how to fix things. So we see Constantine and crew jumping out of this building, the gates of Epoch, and they, it's super high up. They're coming down into some woods, and they somehow manage to survive. And once they land, Frankenstein is the first to shoot up, and he's like, hey, guys, everyone at attention, because we're still being attacked. So a bunch of the Epoch soldiers come in, and Frankenstein just takes them down single-handedly. And they're like, okay, now that that's taken care of, we got to go find Zatanna and Tim. And we cut over to the scene of the battle where Zatanna's like, hey, my spell is telling me that John and everyone else is at the tall tower at the edge of the city. And Tim's like, well, you can deal with that. I'm going to lead these people to freedom, whatever. And this huge giant ship shows up, starts firing down lasers. Zatanna does a spell to protect them and then says, hey, we got to hide. Like, we got to get out of here. And Tim's like, no, they should hide from me. And he uses some magical ability to basically destroy all these ships out of the sky. Vicar, who is saying, all right, everyone concentrate on the boy. He's the source of all this. He sees this electrical storm that's tearing apart the worlds is also destroying this nearby city that has a lot of people in it. And he's like, hey, network, where's my electromagnetic shielding? And the network's like, oh, offline, this horrible thing. And so Vicar has to make the choice. All of these people are in danger. He goes back and he tells the army priorities to protect the citizens, which then Tim is like, yes, they're retreating. Let's go. Let's attack. Let's do this. But Zatanna sees like, there's a lot of innocent death over there. We need to go save them. So at that point, Zatanna goes off. She casts a magic spell to protect the people in the city and tells Vicar to basically help whoever he can while she's holding off the storm. So Tim sees that Zatanna is going off to do the right thing, more or less, and just like, wait, everyone, time out? No, please stop the attack. No, we need to stop this. I don't want this anymore. So he's just tearfully sobbing for everyone to stop the killing. The rest of the crew sees this battle going on, and they're like, okay, I don't really think there's anything that we can do about that directly, so maybe we just chill out here for a while. And then all of a sudden, Tim's dad, Jack, he shows up, and he's like, Constantine, hey, where's my son? And he's like, oh, he's up there in the middle of the fight. And so he's like, yeah, all right, I got a plan. So he flies up, and he uses some magic of his own to basically stop everyone mid what they're doing. The entire battle just freezes midair. And he goes over to Tim and he's like, hey, look, I didn't want this magic life for you. Like, yeah, I know about it. I did some stuff with it, but I didn't want this for you. But if we're in this, then we're in this. So we've just got to deal with it. Now, what we need to do to save the world is take all of our magic, as much as we can do, focus it into a beam, and just blow it off into deep space. Like, we just need it off planet. That's the only thing we got to do. Got it? And so on the count of 3, they fire off beams together, and it goes on for like 20 minutes, where Constantine makes the point that even any powerful mage that was stuck in that beam for more than a few seconds would be dead, and they fired it off for 20 minutes. So at the very end, the magic's gone, the storms have subsided, and basically everyone's just cool with each other. Like, Vickers like, oh no, you guys are chill. You helped save the town. Maybe there is some room for understanding or whatnot. So we just get a huge wrap-up scene. Tim and his dad decide to stay on this side in order to basically rebuild and try to get the world back to a better place. Constantine, while he's still unable to lie, apparently said some things to Zatanna that she's going to remember and use against him later. And so they all zap their way back, and we see that Constantine's basically recounting the story to Johnny Peril, and Peril's like, okay, well, is there anything else you still have to do? And they say, okay, well, Red Orchid and, or was it Black Orchid? One of the orchids. And Xanadu, they're not mentally better after all this. Like, they experience things on that side that are going to mess with them. And the second thing, of course, is his relationship with Zatanna. And Zatanna's like, hey, I just want to tell you, you don't got to say anything. And Constantine's like, no, Zatanna, I really do have to say something. And he turns to Steve Trevor and just like, we're done. We're not working with you anymore. This is it. You can take all your magical playtime stuff. We're done. Put all the stuff in the black room. Don't contact us again. And he starts walking his way to the House of Mystery. And Steve Trevor's like, oh, if you turn your back on us, you turn your back on Argus. And that means the Justice League. And he's like, I'm sorry, you think we care? We're going to do our own thing now. Screw you. And he walks in the House of Mystery with the whole team. And that's that. Issue over. I liked it. I think it wrapped stuff. Oh, well, okay, here's the thing. I think it wrapped up the Tim Hunter storyline with his father and all that. And the world tearing apart story. I think those wrapped up very nicely. I don't think it wrapped up the fact that people had their powers haywire and they just got better. Like, Xanadu just came back to the world and, oh, yep, she de-aged, no problem. And the Vicar storyline, the fact that there was this science community. Like, I said that Vicar like accepted them now, but in reality that was only a narration box. We never actually saw that. So it was definitely more tell not show, and I really would have appreciated a bit more on that. So while a couple of the plot lines wrapped up nicely, I think the other ones are just kind of left dangling. And it's fair, I don't think that they needed to wrap up every plot line, but it did feel a little more disappointing than I would have liked at that point. So yeah, overall, I'll give it a 7.5. I liked more of it than I disliked, and I still think it was a solid issue overall. But in terms of the entire arc, it just left a bit too much dangling for me to say that it was a fantastically well done arc. This isn't one of the like all-timers for Justice League Dark. It's just a interesting little point of here's where the story continues on. So yeah, good but not great. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this March 27th, 2013. And apparently, and I'm going to talk about this at the beginning of next episode as well, but apparently DC, for the month of April, had an initiative called WTF Certified, where there would be some amazing, shocking twist in all the comics that would completely shake everything to their core. Because I guess 18 to 19 issues in, things are getting a little bit stale. While I can appreciate that, the issue that came with it is that all of the comics came with a fold-out cover. I have not built my structure here of the show to adapt to a fold-out cover on screen. So you're just getting what was on the shelf. Very sorry if you wanted to see the fold-out, but This is an audio podcast too, so screw it. I'm not that sorry. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Let me tell you the comics that are coming out next week. We only have 12 of them, so that's nice. But we have the number 19 issues of Detective Comics, Batwing, Action Comics, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Stormwatch, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing. In addition, we have the number 11 comics of Earth 2, World's Finest, and Dial H, and the number 7 issue of Phantom Stranger. Lot going on, apparently a lot of crazy twists. I would love to see you there next time, but if you have any comments, thoughts, anything you want to share, go ahead and hit us up on Discord, on Reddit, on Twitter, on anything you want. Patreon, that's a thing. All that's in the description. Be sure to check it out. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next episode. Listen through to the entire thing, because I hide the little secret messages in the middle that you didn't know about if you skip around. And yeah, always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.